Hello, this is another update video to my Raycaster. Uh, I've done some work on it. Let's just launch it. You can see. So it has textures now, which is pretty cool. This took way longer and way more troubleshooting than I thought it would. This is like a solid like day's work uh, to get this to work. I had so many fucking problems getting this to work. It's rewritten. The sort of rendering engine is rewritten. So now instead of using surfaces, I'm using actual SDL textures instead, in like an actual renderer. This was not too bad. It involved a little bit of bit manipulation, but that's fine. And also, it made me cry that uh, C apparently does not have a 24 bit unsigned integer as like a built-in type, which I think is very, very unfortunate. But it doesn't have that because I'm using 24 bitmap for the textures. Performance is still good. The rendering, switching to textures did slow it down because now it has to read pixel information from the texture, but this isn't too bad if you use like texture streams, which is apparently what you're supposed to do. Uh, it it's pretty cool. I have no idea how to do the walls and ceiling. I think walls and ceilings is probably going to be a bit more difficult, and also I'm a bit tired now. Jesus, the code to get this to work, fucking hell, man. It I'm not sure how to put it, but it was a bit painful with all the fucking coordinates here and coordinates there. It needs to stretch to this and stretch to that and map. I used to have this really strange bug where if you walked really close to a texture, it would stretch like outwards in the x direction. I knew why it was, but fixing that was really annoying, right? And I need to keep track to like how far away you're from the projection plane, so that when you're far away and the wall doesn't fill up your entire screen, then the texture just stretches or shrinks, right? But if you get close enough that the texture fills up, the wall fills up the entire wall, then the projected height of the wall is actually smaller than the actual height of the wall, right? Because it's cut off. But the code for the projection actually says that the wall becomes larger, because if we had an infinite screen, the wall would stretch out and become really, really tall. And this caused the textures to do like really weird things when you got close to them. That, you know, the actual sort of wall height, that worked fine with that sort of code, but the textures didn't. You can kind of see it still has some warping if you get really close. This, I mean, it's very, very slight. If you look straight ahead on a texture and you're very close, it warps it a bit. I think honestly at this point, since it looks fine looking on it sideways and stuff like this, I might just put in that like you're not allowed to walk like this close to a wall. That's like the thing. This also gets improved if you use a smaller step size in the Raycaster. I also tried rewriting the Raycaster to use I think it's called the DDA algorithm. I could not get that to work. I spent maybe 2 hours trying to get that to work, and it just didn't work. And I don't have the energy to rewrite it. So right now it's still using fixed step size. Maybe someday, you know, I'll rewrite it to use non-fixed step size, because I thought it would work. I did the math on paper, everything, and nope, just didn't fucking work. The render has a slight, like the textures behave slightly strangely. And to show this to you, I have to change this wall to a different text. So let's just rename this wall 5. Okay, I guess it's just called 5 now. And we'll rename wall 3 to just wall. And you see how it's a red strip, a green strip, and a blue strip. But if we look at this texture, you can see it's like halfway. It's like it starts. It's like it's interchanged the position of where the start is. So instead of going from 0 to 128, which is how big my texture is, it's going from 64 to 128 and then wrapping around and going to back up to 64 again. I have no fucking idea why this happens. I have no idea. I've looked in the code, but I have no idea why this happens. It's sort of an unintended feature though, because it makes textures tile a little bit better around corners. Right? So that's actually very good. It's an unintended feature. But I would prefer if let's call this one wall 5 and this one wall, so we get back to the original. Actually, we can use this for the wall texture. I would like to figure out why, so like I could tell why, but I have no idea where in the code it does this. I suspect if we look at the code, yeah, we're in the right function. This function which is called distance to wall. It shouldn't be called distance to wall because it doesn't give you the distance only. It gives you the distance and where on the wall you hit. I suspect it might be in this code here, which is kind of disgusting. So I need to know where on the wall I hit. And because the check to hit up here on this line does a rounding, it means that values close to 0.5 will have gotten rounded to 0 or 1, which means it's the other value we want. I have a comment here explaining it. And there should be a better way. And with the DDA algorithm, you get the coordinate you hit sort of for free. And I don't get it for free here. So this might be the cause of this sort of starting in the middle. Also, small thing, modF function. I fucking hate the modF function. Well, it's a good function. But I hate the second fucking parameter of the modF function. I'm using here the address of dx. This is a dummy variable. I want to say null. I'm going to throw away the integral part. But it will, in the function, it will try to write to null, and then it will throw a seg fault. Also, the fucking... I'm so angry. The GNU debugging tool, I bet it's a good tool. I bet it's a great tool. I don't know how to use it. I've used it because I was getting seg faults to the left and to the right. And I got like, oh, you got a seg fault at this address in question mark in like open parentheses, close parentheses. I'm like, that doesn't fucking help me. I don't, like, what am I supposed to do with that information? You give me an address. Maybe it gives me that. Maybe the address is like the instruction pointer or whatever. But that's useless if I don't know where I am. So, well, whatever. But yeah, so this function here is... I mean, it's very short. But it needs to be renamed because it's not distant to wall. It should be called like Raycaster or something. Player A shouldn't be called player A. It should be called like ray angle or something, because this actually takes an angle for the ray. But yeah, so this function here is whatever. I actually did clean up the code. Oh, you wouldn't believe how nice and clean my code looked. And then because I cleaned up all the code, made it look really pretty. I rewrote it so instead of using surfaces, it used textures and renderers, and then the code kind of became ugly again. The big offender is the draw screen function. Jesus fucking Christ, the draw screen function. The drawing of the floor. Actually, I need to fucking... This doesn't draw the floor. This draws the floor and ceiling. That's what it actually does. This function is quite simple. Or this part of the function is quite simple, but the fucking draw wall. Look at this. This is one big for loop. Hang on, how big is it? This is how big it is. This is one big for loop. It's a miracle to me that this works. I've written it myself, but it's a miracle to me that it works. Also, one thing that's really strange, I don't know if this is just how SDL does it, But I would assume that in a bitmap, you have the bytes in the bitmap. I would assume you have you would have the red bitmap, the green bitmap, and then the blue bitmap. This is not how it is. I discovered it's actually the blue bitmap, the green bitmap, and the red bitmap. The blue byte, the green byte, and the red byte. So the blue and the red bytes are swapped. I think at least swapping them made the colors correct. And I didn't feel like going in and like actually reading the bytes, because it's sort of a pain in the ass, at least to do it in C, because I need to cast it to something, as far as I'm aware. I would want it just to spit out like 0, 1, 1, 0, 1, in the order that they are, but I can't do that. Also, I have to use uint 8 here, because there's no uint 24. So instead I have to do this, where I read the colors separately. And it's also kind of unclear, like 3 times 128, why is it 3 and 3 times the texture? I would be able to get rid of these 3s if I could just use a fucking 24 uint 24. uint 24 doesn't exist. I can't use uint 32 because then I'll get 1 by too much. But whatever. Also, this color here should hang on. Let me get to this line. This color here should not be called color. It should be called like brightness or something. So this function here probably needs to be cleaned up. But actually, other than that, I think the code is actually fine. It's just like the 2 main fucking workhorse functions are disgusting. I also rewrote it so instead of piping a file into the program just reads the file called map.txt. The reason I did this was because, again, using the GNU debugger is on something that where you pipe in information just doesn't fucking work. It doesn't fucking work. Or at least I don't know how to do it, because I tried to just do like GDB apostrophe or like colon or whatever, not colon, like tick, right? Map.txt pipe program name quote sign or tick or whatever, and it's just like, no, it doesn't do it. I tried putting it into a shell script and then using GDB on the shell script, but it's like, this isn't an executable. And I'm like, this is a fucking executable. I made the shell script execute. I can execute it, but apparently it's not an executable. Overall, very fun project though. Very fun project. I've learned a lot about, I think, SDL more than raycasting. Like, I understood the basics of raycasting. But I need to look at the DDA algorithm again. I found like an article that explained it, although it didn't explain it super well, or maybe I'm just dumb. But I didn't feel like it explained it super well, and I ended up with so many fucking variables. Like, because you have 2 rays kind of going in parallel, and then either you can calculate the lengths of the rays when you're done. Well, you have to calculate them every step in the for loop to compare them. But then you can increment just by the delta x. This doesn't make any, so I'm not going to go into this. This doesn't make any sense if you don't know like the DDA algorithm. But I ended up with so many extra variables. And I still have this uncertainty of, I don't know, like the transposition error I talked about in the last video. Like, I'm not sure, because you got X and Y and you got rows and columns. And depending on and you'll have swap dominance with these. And this makes it a pain to work with angles, because I do not know what an angle of 0 radians corresponds to. Is an angle of 0 radians, does that point to the quote-unquote right, or does it point up? Because if you transpose, you'll get up, and if you don't transpose, you get right. This is sort of in addition to the fact that this is unrelated, but that the top left is 0, 0, and so y goes downwards. This is completely unrelated, but sometimes I get confused. I'm like, hang on, wait, where's my origin again? But yeah, let's go through. Actually, let's fucking do this. Ooh. Do you know how many fucking segfaults I got? That's why, like, every time it says I use 128, I write 127, right? Like, I don't care. If there's a pixel missing at the bottom of the texture, but I don't get segfaults, I'm quite happy, you know? Let's run around a bit so you can see, like, how it works. You can see a little bit of distortion as you get really close. Because, there's no limit, right? I can go in so I can see, like, the actual pixels. And obviously, this is bad. You want to put some limit here. But yeah, the performance is good, which is nice. But let's now go through the code, I guess, really quickly. I'll do like this. So if you want to read the code, here it is. Pause the video and read the code. It's relatively short. Again, here's the fucking draw screen function. I don't know how many it is. It's 323 lines. So it's increased a little bit. But again, it's a very short program. Honestly, I think it would help me and maybe other people too if on here you can see the line in the middle of the texture here, which I assume is from this mod F business, the way it like determines where it hit. I think probably it would be helpful, at least for me and maybe for other people too, if I like wrote an actual, not like a blog post, but like an actual document explaining how to do this, because there's not a whole lot. There's a lot of information on SDL, but it's mostly for C++. And there's a whole lot of information for raycasting. But unless you're following like a tutorial step by step, things will be slightly different. And then instead of explaining, I found this theme, right, of these articles is they would, instead of explaining the general concept, they would just explain like, oh, here's the formula and here's the derivation, but it's only true in the context of the tutorial so far. And the tutorial isn't here's how you do raycasting. It's here's how my program does raycasting. And that's not what I'm not interested in how your program does raycasting. I'm interested in how to do raycasting, right? If I get a weird fisheye effect, why? Well, it's because you're projecting it's two reasons. It's because you're projecting inside a sphere, and also so that's one reason. So you can't do fixed size steps of the angles. But you also need to correct with like a cosine to get the perpendicular wall distance. Like it's not enough to just do one or the other. And I'm still not clear as to why it's not enough to just do the one where you do not, like you correct for the projection plane. That's another thing that that I have now that I didn't used to have. Where is it? Here we go. This is to projection plane. It's 1. I've put it as 1. I did mess around with this. Like we could change this to like a 2 or something. I actually have it on. This might just fucking fuck up the program. Yeah, no, it works fine. This puts like a distance to the projection plane, which I didn't have when I started. I was sort of implicitly working with a distance to the projection plane of 1 unit. Now, what is 1 unit, right? That's also a little bit unclear, because all these pillars are technically 1 by 1 by 1, and I'm walking like floating point distances between them. But then what does it mean that the distance to the projection plane is 1? Right? Well, it can't mean that the projection plane is like one pillar away from me, right? Because then this would just like make it like this. I wouldn't be able to do this. I wouldn't be able to see through it. This would fuck up. So I think one thing I should have done at the start was write a bit more like on paper what I was going to do, because right now, you know, like I should have decided, like, oh, a pillar is 64 units wide, and set a scale. Because the problem now is I don't have a scale, so all the scale information is sort of in this tangle web of code, which isn't that good. I'm not gonna rewrite it. I'm gonna push ahead. But I maybe I'll write it until it's functional, like it has some more features, and then like do a fucking rewrite and write on paper or something. But yeah, this is the project so far. This video is 20. This video shouldn't be 20 minutes, but this video is 20 minutes long. So I'm gonna end here. I guess I would have to figure out how to do the wall and ceiling. Ideally, I mean, you would have to line up the texture like straight ahead like this, and straight like orthogonally, right? And then rotate it. You rotate the entire texture based on where I am, or I just leave it. I just leave it gray or something. I'm lazy and leave it gray. But yeah. Anyhow, so yeah, that's my Raycaster. Pretty cool. And that's gonna be the end of the video.